Welcome to Mr. Brown's Basement, a channel devoted to sharing the craft of repairing, restoring, and modifying vintage electronic gear, and other random stuff.
Today I'm going to be repairing and enhancing an old iMac G4. When I got this machine, I didn't know its condition. I plugged it in, of course, and it made the startup chime, and I got a big screen of nothing. But upon closer examination, you can see something is happening, and that is there is a display, but no brightness. Of course, I plugged in a keyboard and turned up the brightness control and got nothing. The most likely cause for this is a defective backlight or backlight driver. So the first thing we're going to do today is replace the backlight driver and see if that cures the problem. This is the driver for the 17-inch G4 iMac. Each size of iMac, there were three sizes, 15, 17, and 20-inch, has its own driver board. The driver takes 12 volts or thereabouts and steps it up to what will drive two fluorescent tubes, one over there and one over there, which is probably around 100 volts. Newer machines don't have a driver like this because they don't use fluorescent tubes, they use LEDs. But this computer is from around 2003, so they used fluorescent tubes. The driver resides in the display section of the computer, and the disassembly differs between the different sizes. I will provide a link to the service manual for this computer so you can see for yourself how to disassemble the computer. With this model, what we need to do first is remove the three screws with a 1.5 millimeter Allen key or hex tool. The next step is easier with the iMac on its back. With the three screws removed, you need to push the bezel away. Okay, it's now pushed away about 5 millimeters. At this point, you can lift it up, but don't go crazy because you'll rip the wires out. You can see that there's a wire over there and a flexible printed circuit right over there. Next, take off the capped-on tape, that's the orange tape, and disconnect the pilot light and the microphone connectors. Then tip it up a little further so you can see the backlight connector and the video connector, which is hiding underneath that. The video connector is underneath this piece of film, and there are two little bits that need to be squeezed together. This one and this one, and then this thing will slide out. Now the display is completely free. There is the driver right there.
The driver is just held in with a dab of glue. If you're prepared to destroy the outer shell of the old driver, you can gently pull on it and it will come out. It is not necessary to take out the display to get to the driver.
I've got it back together, and guess what? I have a backlight now. It was the inverter, or driver, whatever you want to call it. I don't have a lot of brightness, so let me go to the control panel and see if I can get some more brightness. Yeah, it works. Excellent. A closer examination of this driver board shows that it has, right next to the power connector, something that says F1, and if you read it, it's yellow. 2A, that's a 2 amp fuse. I suspect that that fuse is dead. Just takes my ohmmeter, which is right over here, to find out. I've measured that fuse, and it's dead. So I can probably bring this board back to life, even though I've slightly mangled the exterior of it, who cares. I have a spare driver. With the computer fully working now, the next step is to make the enhancements. If everything goes well, more memory, an SSD, and a Bluetooth module. All these things are accessed through the bottom plate, so it does require that you put the Mac on its back by supporting the head, so to speak. Phillips number 0, you unscrew the 4 screws, the bottom plate comes off. It's nice that they're captive, they can't get lost. And that reveals this memory module and where the air port, that's the wireless card, would go. This one does not have a wireless card. There's the antenna connector. It would go in this slot. If I have an extra, I might stick it in there. I don't know if I have an extra. It's an old style airport.
I've released the catches on the sodium,
and it's ready to be pulled out and put into an anti-static bag just for safety. Now this computer has 2 different places for memory. One for the user and one which is internal, the memory that came from the factory. But since we're opening it up, that can be upgraded too. It's best to rotate the base so that the airport card slot is on the bottom. It will put less stress on the wires once we start pulling things out. These are the screws that hold on that bottom plate. Since this bottom plate is part of the heatsink system, when you remove it, you may have to reapply heatsink compound. Where you're going to be separating it from is the seam between the ports and the symbols above the ports. And you may have to work it out gently because it may be really in there if it's never been opened since it left the factory. Here we have it with the bottom open, complete with all the dust, which really should be brushed off. The battery, I always remove the battery in old computers because they will literally bust their guts of caustic fluid and destroy everything nearby.
this was a working Mac Color Classic until the battery exploded inside.
There's the modem over there. The Bluetooth connector, I believe, is underneath. Haven't got there yet. Wow, a lot of dust.
This is the place where the heatsink compound has to go.
A few places there. I think that's it.
You have to do something about the heatsink compound, because if you don't, the heat will have nowhere to go, and you'll end up overheating the processor. Just look at this dust.
Take out the two drive connectors. One is for the optical drive and one is for the hard drive. Unscrew the ground screw. And this connector here is for power. It's tucked in over there. You won't see it until you start loosening this off. With this connector, you have to squeeze the top to open the clamps at the bottom. With this one over here, you have to squeeze the top to release the clamp at the bottom. The airport antenna, it looks like it's a solid piece, but it actually comes apart by pulling. It's deceiving because there's heat shrink on it and it makes it look like one piece. The video connector has a plastic cap on it held on by double-sided sticky tape. That must be removed before you can get to the connector. The connector is pulled straight up. The pins inside are extremely fine, so be very, very careful. You don't want to break the pins on the motherboard or the mating connector.
This is my dust removal tool. It was from Home Depot, and it works very, very well.
Okay, here we have the motherboard. I'd like to install the Bluetooth module, which looks like this, like that. Now this one came from another computer. At the end, somewhere, there, right there, that's the antenna. I don't know whether this computer has the cable that goes from the Bluetooth module to the mating connector, which is there, the one covered by Kapton tape. If it doesn't, I may have to use this antenna and find a place for it, because I'll have no way to connect the Bluetooth module to that connector. But there's no way to find out whether that cable is there until I take out the motherboard, which is held in with a bunch of Torx screws. I see one of them right over there, and there's got to be at least one more right over there somewhere. There, and there, and the plastic screw. The motherboard is tethered to the telephone jack connector, so you're going to have to remove the modem. That's held on with two Torx screws, and it pulls straight out. You have to wiggle this out in the direction away from the ports, and it's held in by clips and will not come out nicely, but do it with caution. Here's the underside of the motherboard. And underneath this plastic shield is where the Bluetooth board will go. Right there on that connector. There's the Bluetooth module installed with the wire going out to the Bluetooth antenna. So I'm going to have to find some place to put that antenna, because it certainly won't reach, nor can I connect to, the Bluetooth antenna that was supposed to be used. It also needs to be secured with at least one screw. Yeah, just one screw, I think. And I can find a machine screw that will fit. Got the motherboard back in. I've put back the modem, and I've routed the cable from the Bluetooth board and its antenna right over here. I'm hoping maybe I can stick it onto the inside of the case. That's double-sided sticky tape. Maybe around in there somewhere, because it will never reach where it was intended to go. While I'm here, I might do something about factory installed SIM. I think it's a 256 or a 512. It is TDR PC 2700 256. I think I have a 512. I'll put the 512 in because I can. Now that I've done everything that I want to do with this, which is take out the battery, install the new SIM, install the Bluetooth board. The next step will be to take out the drives so I can replace the hard drive with an SSD. Before the motherboard can be put back in, this thermal pad really should be replaced. Here's the thermal pad that's been replaced. All you do is you buy it by the sheet and cut it into the appropriate shape and stick it on. You want to avoid handling it as much as you can. Remove the drive carriers. There are 6 Torx screws. 1, 2, and a couple more hiding in there. Total of 6, and lots of dust. Those are the 6 screws. The 2 shorter screws hold on the shield over here. The 4 longer screws hold on this frame. Open up this clip and pass the 2 antenna wires through so they're no longer captive. There's one, and there's the other one. That is the DVD and hard drive carrier. It's quite snug in the case. Here's the inside of the case. Don't forget to brush out the dust because it will literally suffocate the computer. You'll have to peel off this piece of white film to expose the hard drive. The film is there just so that when you look down into the computer, it looks white like everything else. You don't see the hard drive and the writing on top. Once you remove the 4 hard drive screws from the sides, the hard drive comes out, and you will have to disconnect the power and the PATA cable. That's the old hard drive, 80 gigabytes. This is the new SSD, it's 120, but it's SATA, and the computer is PATA. So we're going to use this little adapter that connects to SATA on one side, connects to the computer PATA on the other. And because it doesn't fit physically, it's only a few millimeters thick, we use a carrier and mount the SSD to the carrier, and then it will fit into the bracket where the old one used to be. Here's the old hard drive, and here's the SSD. The only problem I can foresee is that it might not fit, which will require me to drill some holes to move the drive over a little bit, because it sticks out a little further and takes this over a little bit as well, and it might not work in terms of cable length. Forget cable length. It doesn't line up. If I line up the screws and the carrier, then the SSD causes this extra board to be in the wrong place, and it doesn't clear by about 1 centimeter. So I'm going to move this over. I could even use double-sided sticky tape, for heaven's sake. That will allow this to clear and probably will help with the cable length problem that I'm anticipating. I'm liking the double-sided sticky tape idea. I want to clear these holes, the mounting holes, and I also have to leave enough space so that when the holes go in, if the screws go through a little bit, that they won't hit the SSD on this side. And recessed a little bit, it will fit in like about that, which looks okay. Double-sided sticky tape to the rescue. It should fit very nicely now, and it won't fall off. Change of plans. Here's the problem. If I mount it like this, the hard drive cable comes out like this. There's no indexing pin. The original, here, when the ATA cable was plugged in, the indexing pin was on the top. That means that this cable will have to twist once, and it's not long enough for that. So I either need a longer cable, or I have to find another way to mount the SSD. Alright, after a lot of head scratching, I've decided to not modify this mount at all, that it would probably be the simplest solution, just to have a longer cable and give it one twist. It might be a little bit of a stretch to make everything fit in the computer once it's done. But that probably is the simplest solution, and the simplest solution is the best solution. I wish I didn't have to do it, but I don't see any other alternative. I've got the hard drive in as best I can. There's the longer cable. I should be able to turn it so that it's facing the right way. Hopefully nothing is binding or loose. Doesn't look like it. I didn't bother putting in the hard drive film. I thought it was really not worth the trouble. Besides, it made it hard for me to see what I was doing inside. So next is to reconnect the motherboard, but I have to do something with the heat sinks. I've cleaned the thermal grease off this part of the heat sink and the other parts, the parts that mate together. And the last thing I'll do after hooking up all the wires, and there's still a mess of them to reconnect, is apply the heatsink compound. I will also attach this antenna here to the side of the case. I found the other antenna is actually a dual antenna. It has the antenna for Wi-Fi and for Bluetooth. But since there's no way I can use that, I'm going to attach this one in a discrete spot. Everything is connected up. What I've done is I've left out some of the capped-on tape. I suppose a purist would say I should replace it, but I'm not going to. It's my computer. I don't want to. I've also taken out the extremely annoying plastic piece that was above the video connector that made it very easy to damage the connector, and I hope I didn't. I'm about to apply the heatsink compound to the two spots that need it, and then apply power. Well, install the screws and the RAM module and apply power, and hope for the best. A generous application of heatsink compound is good because it will get squeezed out between the two surfaces and form a really tight connection, a thermal connection between the heatsink connected to the processor and the rest of the case. The first time I turned it on, I got 3 beeps, which means no memory recognized. So I opened it up again and took out the extra memory I put in. I don't understand why it's not being recognized, but it's not. Got the original memory module inside. I'm getting the flashing folder, which is a good sign. I'm going to put in a System 9 disk and see if I can format the drive. To get the drive door open, there's a trick to getting it open, and that is to hold down the mouse button while turning on the machine. But I can't do that with one hand on the camera, so I'll do that in a moment, not yet. I don't think it's my day to make a video. I put in a bootable DVD, and it did not boot. I could hear it trying, but it didn't boot, which suggests perhaps the drive is bad. So I'm going to try and boot up off USB, which I'm formatting right now, and hopefully I can get somewhere with this computer today. Well, good news, it's booting up off the USB. Oh wait, kernel panic. The reason why I was getting kernel panic was because it was only seeing 256 megs, and it needs more than that. For some reason, the lower SODIMM, the memory module, wasn't being recognized. But after removing it and sticking it in and removing it and sticking it in a few times, It seems to be recognized now, and I'm able to install macOS 10.5 from a USB disk. It's awfully slow, and I'm probably going to have something to eat rather than watch the thermometer move very, very, very slowly. And then hopefully I can put Mac OS 9 on a different partition. 10.5 doesn't support Mac OS 9 as being part of the operating system, but on a separate partition it should be okay. So I'll be back after dinner. Well, here we are. I replaced the module that runs the backlight. The inverter board works great. I've added a Bluetooth module that seems to be recognized. The RAM, well, there was plenty of RAM in there anyway. I guess the module I had was wrong. And I added the SSD. And that doesn't work!
There was certainly something very strange happening on the ATA bus. I decided to go back to the drive to look at it.
This is a Seagate Barracuda 80 gigabyte drive, and right there is a jumper. Let's just take a look at the specs of this drive. Here are the specifications on the Barracuda drive. The bus in the iMac G4 wants a cable select configuration, while the SATA to PATA adapter that I have only works as a master drive, so I have to change the adapter. This is a different PATA to SATA adapter. This one has jumpers on it that let you configure it. A little bit more expensive than the generic type that I used before. And as you see, we can set it up for cable select. Now that it's set up for cable select, I'm going to take the iMac apart again and take out the other adapter and put this one in. Instead of freezing, crashing, and behaving strangely, I bet you it's going to work. This is the one I had in originally that I just pulled out. As you see, there are no options at all. It sets up the drive as a master and there's no choice. I was able to install Leopard, Tiger, and Classic on this machine.
But it wasn't without hiccups. That will be the subject, perhaps, of another video.
There you have it. SSD and the DVD drive and Bluetooth. I hope you enjoyed this video on the iMac G4 repair and enhancement. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more interesting and unusual videos. That's all for today. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.